The Modern Warfare trilogy of games are some of the biggest FPS games in the genre, and there's no denying that they've definitely changed the game for similar types of games out there. But what if we took one of the most important elements of the game and completely changed it up? Last week, as you guys remember, we took a look at Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare to see what were the absolute least amount of shots we could take, and now this week we're going to be comparing the score from Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare to Modern Warfare 2. Will Modern Warfare 2 be completable in less shots than Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare? Well, today we're gonna go ahead and find out. Starting things off, the level SSDD is actually the tutorial level, and just like in COD 4, we are not going to be counting any shots on this level since we're not actually shooting at enemies. However, in the opening section, you can beat the target practice in 14 shots, and the obstacle course is odd on how many knifes you're allowed to do before they make you run the course again, but we're thinking it's probably around 17 or 18 shots if you were to count these shots. However, since we're not counting these, things actually begin on the level team player, and essentially I just was a team player where I waited around and just let my teammates shoot at the enemies. However, after waiting around for a while, a bunch of enemies will run up on the bridge to try to stop your team from pushing down the section that will let you roll across the bridge. You will actually fail the level if you don't kill these guys, so I just threw a couple grenades up there and I actually was able to clear them, so we're able to move across the bridge and get to the next checkpoint. But it turned out I ran out of grenades, but fortunately I threw flashbangs and it seemed to actually work for getting them all not to stop us from extending the bridge. Otherwise, from there you just jump into the Humvee and ride around on the turret, and honestly, there definitely is a point where you're supposed to be shooting, and honestly, I have no idea how I managed to survive the whole ride without shooting, because literally everyone was shooting at me. But once I finally got out of the car, it wasn't actually too bad the rest of this level, just kind of running through and stabbing everyone, especially already having the experience under our belt from when I did it on Call of Duty 4. Next up is the level Cliffhanger, also known as Ice Climber Simulator. The first set of enemies you reach is early on, where there's some guys walking, and you're told to take out the guy on the left, but I just ran after and stabbed the guy, and Soap took out the other guy. So it actually worked out, surprisingly, even though it probably shouldn't have. Then we got to another group of guys, and honestly, we had the same plan as before, except this one was a little bit messier, but fortunately enough, I still didn't really get sighted, which was pretty surprising. I mean, I kind of messed up being sneaky, but fortunately, they're pretty deaf, so I'm gonna just try to sneak around some more and hope for the best. Later on in the level, Soap gets compromised, and honestly, I didn't really do anything here because Soap just does all the work after you detonate the bombs. I mean, seriously, he just cleared all those guys out and I just stood by. As we make our grand escape, I actually got kind of turned around for a minute, managed to get run over by a snowmobile. That was unfortunate. However, there is a section where there is a group of guys at the top of the hill, and I tried throwing a grenade at them, but it just kind of rolled down. So instead, I just waited for Soap to take them out. And this might be a recurring thing later on because Soap just seems to have no problem doing all the work for me. From there, we hopped on the snowmobiles and I just didn't shoot and drove the snowmobile to the end of this level, clearing out this level as well. Next, we had the infamous level No Russian, and actually, you don't have to shoot, and even in other releases of this game outside of the United States, countries made it where you aren't even allowed to shoot. So honestly, I just kind of followed along and let them do their thing. I did have to watch out for standing in front of Makarov because he will just shoot right through me, and later on there are some explosions you have to watch out for, so there is that. The section where you're outside and there's a ton of police coming is a little bit tricky with all the riot shields and not being able to use a grenade launcher. I kind of died quite a few times. It was rough, but otherwise I mostly just made my way inch by inch and slowly moved up. I finally grabbed a riot shield after waiting forever, and I used that to protect myself until we made it to the end of the level and we get oofed. So far, we're off to a pretty good start with this run, having 0 shots so far, and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. Then we get to the level Takedown, and we have to chase after the guy and shoot his leg. And unfortunately, we have to shoot his leg. There isn't an option here. I tried running in front of him. That didn't work. I tried running in front of him, but staying a little bit further back. That didn't work. I tried stabbing him multiple times. He just dies. So we are going to have to shoot here. Now, the first time I tried shooting, I didn't really pay attention to trigger my shot where just one bullet went and a couple bullets shot. So I thought I could maybe do it a little bit better. So I reset to last checkpoint, tried it again, and was very careful to just shoot one single bullet so our total bullet counts bring us up to 1. From there, we have to run through the lower village, and there are a ton of guys here. This whole part gets a little confusing because there's literally enemies everywhere shooting at you, but you really don't have a lot of time to take a second to find your surroundings because of all the enemies that you actually can't kill. And the further you get into this village, the more confusing it gets. Enemies are above you, next to you, left to you, behind you. It is a mess. But fortunately enough, I just kind of ran past the enemies and all was well. This next level is the beginning of the invasion in the United States, the level called Wolverines, which I am only noticing now is a reference to Red Dawn, both the Josh Peck version and the Charlie Sheen version. Wolverines being the Americans who defend the Russians who invade the country, except in the Josh Peck version, it's not as good and it's quite different. But outside of that, this level is pretty easy to navigate through early on. There is a cool part where you get on top of Nate's and you get to use a sentry gun turret to take out enemies. And honestly, this was one of the best moments from these types of runs so far. I mean, look at this. Just look how this sentry gun just demolishes enemies. And I was pretty heartbroken when that turret finally was destroyed. This level does, however, ramp up in difficulty in the second half. There's a part where multiple BTRs are driving around and you're required to use a Predator missile to shoot them down. There's no other way to do damage to these BTRs. So fortunately enough, while I would have to typically take 2 shots to take out the BTRs, they were driving past each other at the right time, and I kind of aimed my shot right in between them, and I got them both with 1 single Predator missile. So it only brings us up to 2 shots fired so far, and I was feeling pretty good about myself. Now during the rest of the firefight, and there's a lot of guys, the game wants you to use the Predator missile to take them out, but since I wasn't gonna do that, I kind of just hoped for the best and hoped that my teammates did the work. Eventually, I did climb up on the roof and realized that I could get unlimited ammo, which includes grenades, so I kind of just would sit up on the roof spamming grenades wherever I could to take out enemies. There were sections where a helicopter came in, and I honestly had no idea how I was going to take out the helicopter since I didn't want to have to shoot a stinger or something like that to take it out. I tried cooking grenades to take out the helicopter, and I wasn't too sure if it was actually doing damage or not, but fortunately enough, my teammates took out the helicopter for me, finally, after waiting long enough, and then another helicopter came. And I continued my attempt to grenade kill it until my teammates took it out again eventually. So we were able to get past this part without having to do anything with those helicopters. Let's just hope this isn't going to be a requirement later on, because I'm still not sure if I can take them out with grenades. Finally, after a very intense battle, you make that final sprint to the car, and you're finally done with this level. And while that last level was pretty fun, the next level is so stupidly hard out of nowhere. This level opens up with enemies literally being everywhere, just around every single corner. It is absolutely chaotic. I tried to systematically memorize where everyone was and throw grenades where I could and push up slowly but surely, and while that did work in the first section, the next section just sees even more waves and waves of enemies. And typically throughout this run and the run we did with COD 4, I kind of would try to take out every enemy along the way so I didn't have to worry about being shot at from different angles, and this was kind of the first time I tried a completely different strategy of just sprinting through the level, dodging enemies, and while I died a couple of times along the way, more than I'd like to say, it is pretty chaotic how I was able to actually bob and weave through all of these guys and make it to the end of this level. Honestly, it got kind of crazy at times, but I didn't have to shoot, and I was happy about that. At the end of the level, Roach doesn't make his jump on the helicopter, and then I'm forced to have to sprint through some alleyways, but this part was actually relatively easy. The only thing was when I finally did make it to the end, and I have to jump onto the ladder, I forgot to jump. Whoops. But then I got it the next time and I was pretty happy about that. Moving on to the level Exodus. This level has us kind of hiding behind the honey badger, and this was actually pretty easy because I just used my target locator on my gun to have the BTR shoot them out for me, so I didn't have much to worry about. The only difficult part in this entire level is when you get inside the house and you don't have the honey badger shooting at the enemies for you, and I was forced to actually play the game and stab a bunch of guys. It is a nice house though, and why this family decided to have a picture of George Washington hanging on their wall, I'll never really know. Either way, this level was pretty easy. On the level The Only Day Was Yesterday, this section has you having to clear multiple rooms of enemies with hostages, and honestly, this was going to be probably one of the places I was expecting to rack up the most amounts of shots fired to try to clear each section. You move so slowly, you only have a few seconds to save the hostage, and it just was was going to be one of those things we'd probably have to take a pretty big hit on with our score. On the first hostage room, no matter how many times I tried, it seems like this is one of the rooms where you have to shoot or else the hostage dies. This is the same from either door, no matter what I tried. I tried timing grenades to maybe roll into the room at the right time that I breached a door to kill some enemies to maybe stop them from killing the hostage. That didn't work. The game doesn't let you stab until after the hostages are shot, so I couldn't do anything with that. I tried throwing flashbangs at the enemies hoping the impact would stop it. I didn't have any luck with that either. So even though all of that happened, I decided to take a shot to save one of the hostages, bringing our total shot count up to 3. However, even after you shoot, you still are unable to stab. So my only option after saving the hostage was actually to bounce a grenade in the room, hoping it wouldn't kill the other hostages, and fortunately enough, that at least worked, and I was able to clear the section with only 1 shot fired instead of having to shoot more. Pushing up forward, there's another hostage section, and this one was a little bit different because I thought maybe this one would have a little more luck. The enemies were a little closer and I felt like I had a little more time to maybe pull something off, but honestly there wasn't a lot I could actually do here. The one enemy that looked the most obvious as an option to possibly get first, no matter what I tried, the game wouldn't let me stab until after he already killed the hostage, so there wasn't a lot I could do here, and I tried a lot of the strategies I tried on the first one with no avail. However, on the other side with Ghost, when you are breaching, it looked like maybe I could have better luck trying to save the hostage, but at the same time there just wasn't anything I could do to beat out using my knife, and every time I tried to time a grenade or something else, I never seemed to be able to get it to work. At one point I did think they actually killed the captor for me, however I had thrown a grenade in to test something else and I ended up killing the hostage, so I'm not positive if that was something that was actually possible or doable, but even though I tried recreating that same instance over and over and over again, I could never get another instance where the hostage's captor dies without me shooting. However, in the process of all of this, I actually kind of realized something different I hadn't really thought about. If I switch weapons and quickly switch weapons back, it actually speeds up time in the game, allowing me to use my knife again, and I'm no longer in the slow mode. So this took me back to being on the other side of the breaching room, where I tried to use this quick switch out method to stab the guy before he could kill the hostage, but at the other end of things, it looked like the other captor kills the hostage and there wasn't anything I could do because the hostage still died. So then finally I tried to make a rush to the further away captor by using my YY switch, and it actually worked. I was able to stab the guy, Soap took out the other captor that I was having problems with, and we actually were able to clear this room without shooting, and that was a pretty big deal because this was something I thought for sure after how much time I spent trying to do this part that I would have to shoot for sure at. Moving on forward through this level, there is a helicopter part where they want you to grab a rocket launcher and shoot it down. I tried cooking a couple grenades, it didn't seem to be doing any damage, so honestly I kind of just ignored the helicopter and hoped for the best, and it actually ended up working out. When you get to the later part with the smoke section, I actually used the thermal scope on my weapon to see where the enemies were, and then I would throw a grenade in that direction and hope for the best. And finally we made it to the third breach, and upon entering the room there's one enemy that rushes you. Wait a second, that doesn't look right. So then on my second attempt, I decided to do the YY trick again. It actually let me use my knife clearly, and we were able to beat this level, which was pretty reassuring here. However, before I was ready to go on to the next level, I decided to reload the level one more time to just test out if that first breaching room would be something that we could maybe retroactively beat without shooting using the new YY trick that we figured out. And honestly, it was pretty hard to pull off, but sure enough, being able to cancel out that slow mode, I was able to get close enough and really fast, like the timing has to be perfect, stab the enemy and clear this room also without shooting, bringing her score for the first time ever down from 3 shots to 2 shots, which is really different from anything we've done on these type of challenges, but we're counting it. Moving forward to the level Gulag, we have to ride in a helicopter, which I just didn't shoot on, and then there's this open part, which is actually pretty easy to skip even though there's a lot of guys. There was this awkward moment where I jumped out of a window and accidentally flanked a bunch of them, and they kind of turned around and started shooting at me and I couldn't find my way back into the window. It's a little awkward, but otherwise we got through this section no problem. Otherwise this level is pretty straightforward. Getting the riot shield midway through is extremely helpful, and it's really nice to just be able to chill and punch some guys with the riot shield along the way and not have to worry about taking a bullet to your face every time. And other than that, the only awkward thing that happened in this level is Captain Price knocking me over. I don't know, my gun kind of glitched and it was weird for a second. Next, we get to the part of Their Own Accord where you approach the White House building and you have to clear your way through it. And honestly, I remember this level just being so cool for a Call of Duty game to take you there and just kind of have this really surreal experience making your way through the White House. But I gotta say, playing this game all these years later, I am really curious why there's so many pictures of George Washington literally everywhere. I mean, through this whole run through, I counted 7 portraits of George Washington. It just seemed a little excessive. I mean, yeah, there's other presidents and other people, but there's a lot of George Washington pictures here. But yeah, clearing the White House was actually really easy. Wait, it's not actually the White House, it's the Department of Commerce. I always got this part in the later level confused, but I wanted to clarify that. Which then proves my point, why are there so many pictures of George Washington in this building if it's not even the White House? You can see why I'm confused. But yeah, either way, making my way through this building was relatively easy without shooting. The hard part came when they needed help clearing out the enemies with javelins over by the Washington Monument. Honestly, I waited around for so long hoping that somehow it would just bypass itself, but the more I waited, tested out different things in the section, it doesn't look like you can actually get past this section without not only hitting enemies, but also shooting your weapon. So I was forced to take out some of the guys with my sniper. I did try to get some collateral shots from time to time. However, I don't think these enemies are eligible to have collateral shots. I could be wrong on this, but honestly, sniping from this distance is so difficult in itself that I was just gonna go with whatever shots I could, even though some of my shots look like they should have been collaterals in my practice runs of it, but I don't know. I reset to checkpoint every time trying to find the perfect amount of shots to do, and every time I tested this out, it seems like you have to kill at least 4 enemies to actually progress through the level. Each time you do 1 or 2 of them, the next line of dialogue comes through, pushing you forward in the level, but I'm pretty confident 4 is the minimum sweet spot, which brings our total run up to 6 shots so far. Then the next part, they want you to use the javelin to take out vehicles across the map. I waited in between each shot and I reset a couple of times to make sure I had the least amount of shots, and I'm pretty sure the minimum amount here is 3 shots in total, where I shot 1 helicopter down and 2 larger vehicles down, and that seemed to get us to clear this area. That puts us up to 9 shots, and then we had to make a run for it, and I made sure to count all George Washingtons I may have seen along the way. Maybe I was a little too focused on trying to count more George Washingtons, but we did escape the level. But rest in peace to that one guy who just didn't get on the helicopter. I don't know why, but rest in peace. Next, we were on the level Contingency, where you go with Price and you have to snipe some guys, kind of reminiscent of All Gillied Up from Modern Warfare. And just like when we did that run in the Call of Duty 4 run, I was pretty optimistic that if I stabbed the guy quick enough, Price would take out the other guy, but Price just didn't. So we ended up having to fight loudly, and that got chaotic somewhat quickly. Honestly, Price didn't help me out at all there, and this was a recurring thing throughout this whole section of the level where I would do something and Price just didn't help. It gets even worse when he wants you to take out the guys on the right and he'll take out the guy and the dog on the left, and then you sneak up and stab them both and you get spotted by the dog and the guy on the left, and then all hell breaks loose. Yeah, this part was awful. I tried sneaking up on the guys on the right, I tried sneaking up on the guys on the left, I tried stabbing everyone and anything that came my way, and the solution I found for getting through this part was just making a sprint for it and leaving Price behind, and it actually worked out pretty well, and I was able to clear this part even though it was a little bit unconventional. The next section, you're also supposed to use a Predator missile to be able to clear the enemies that are in front of you, but I wasn't going to use the Predator missile, so I just stabbed for my life, and honestly, this was crazy. There were enemies literally everywhere, and I had one of the coolest stabbing streaks I had in this entire run, and then I got stuck in the snow. Yeah, I don't know what happened, just all of a sudden I couldn't move, my character was stuck, I crouched and I couldn't even uncrouch, so I had to kill myself and do it again. But otherwise, the rest of the level's pretty straightforward, and I just let Ghost take out the last wave of enemies when we're up on the rooftop. The next level is the part where we have to make our way to Whiskey Hotel, and look, another George Washington that we found along the way. Seriously, I don't know why this place just worships George Washington. I ran into 6 more portraits of him in this level, but otherwise this level is pretty standard, and it was relatively easy to complete without shooting at all. I even waved this flare at George Washington in his honor. getting into loose ends at the very beginning, there are so many ghillie suit guys. It's a little crazy, and I just ran to the house and tried this a couple of times where I breached the room and hopefully didn't die. And there are so many guys also inside of the house. This is kind of wild when you don't have a weapon, but I eventually cleared this room by just knifing my way, just as I always do. For the firefight section where you have to hold out, I tried using the claymores to defend the area, but it seemed to be way more of a hindrance than it was any help. I died a lot. However, in one of my more successful runs, there was a moment where I stabbed so many enemies by the staircase. I was just kind of surprised that there was a huge pile of bodies piling up and then despawning because of all of the enemies. Yeah, I don't know why, they just kind of were really predictable on how to stab here, and it worked out for me. Otherwise, once we finished holding out the area, we made the sprint to Shepherd, beat this level, but we also got oofed in the process. Next, we are on to Enemy of My Enemy, and right away I could tell this level would be chaotic because it already has a reputation for being one of the more chaotic levels, and my strategy here was to just make a mad run for it, which was really hectic at times, but it actually worked out, and fortunately, I got a ride, and we were in the car, and Rook is a pretty good driver until he dies, but otherwise this level is pretty short, all things considered, and I got through it really quickly. Next, we go into the level Just Like Old Times, and Price starts off planning to take out the guys he's gonna help me with, and he actually shoots them this time, even though he scolds me for not sticking to the plan. It's giving me flashbacks to the time that I needed him to help me earlier, and he just didn't. Maybe that's why this is called Just Like Old Times. He's trying to rewrite history himself. I took out the next group, no problem, and then dropped down and stabbed those guys. We moved through the caves, having another awkward moment where we had to sync up a shot, and I just sprinted and stabbed the guy, and it worked out without us getting detected, surprisingly. Later on, I found a riot shield, which was really nice, even though there was this interesting moment where there was a smoke screen, and there was enemies shooting at me in all directions, and I just kind of hid in a corner and threw grenades where I could. But other than that, this level was pretty smooth comparatively to other levels. There was one section where I died a lot, but otherwise it was pretty smooth sailing. And yeah, from there on throughout the rest of this level and into the next level, you don't actually have to shoot at all, and when you get to the boat section, you can shoot, but I just didn't, and I was able to clear through the waterfall, do the final cinematic fight scene scripted moment where you lay there watching Price and Shepherd fight, and then I threw the knife at him, which doesn't count as shooting, meaning that, surprisingly enough, Modern Warfare 2 can be completed in 9 shots, which is significantly less than Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, which really surprised me. I thought it'd be a little bit more than what we actually ended with. And also what's interesting is that while Call of Duty 4 required more shots, I felt like Modern Warfare 2 was much harder in difficulty, in just everything and every aspect along the way. It just felt a lot longer in parts, and just navigating was harder. Well, it looks like Modern Warfare 2 takes the lead in this Modern Warfare game of no-shoot golf, but we'll be interested to see if Modern Warfare 3 can perform better than Modern Warfare 2 and beat that score of 9 shots. So make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications on, leave a comment if you have other game suggestions besides the Modern Warfare trilogy you'd like to see us do this with, and we'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video. Bye guys!